It's according to what we were talking about. If you're talking in terms of starting a new business venture, or if we were talking about the expansion of an existing business, or if we were talking in terms of the transference of an already existing business in a neighborhood that's in transition, different problems are confronted in each one of those situations. That individual walks into our door. He is, at that particular juncture, assigned to one of our staff coordinators. That individual is on our staff, will take down a narrative. And based on those problems that come out in the narrative, then we, at that point, assign one of our consultants. We have consultants from throughout the Dallas area, and we're seeking additional consultantships. And we determine that that business is one, either a viable one or it's not.
I would assume that it's probably, and my board formally takes the position to the council in the city, that it feels that it's impossible for EDS to get an objective review of its presentation because of this coverage. We deeply appreciate the time the council has taken and the consideration the council has given to this matter. But, and we think it's unfortunate that because of my personal visibility that my corporation in this city is unable to get a fair and routine treatment in any matter that it brings to the city's attention. We expect no more, no less than any other organization in the city.
I think this. I made the statement the Sunday prior to going out, and I think that if the national economic package and the national demands such as Jerry just mentioned here in protection of our people and the local demands in protection of our people and their rights in the forthcoming 3 years are weighed and analyzed in comparison as to the fact that the management on the local level, when we went into the bargaining sessions, had numerous demands against this local union and how they were going to change the overtime equalization groups, the seniority groups, and so forth and so on. They withdrew these demands, and they didn't get those demands.
I don't think the accident rate or the payout in the form of claims reflects the need for that kind of increase. I don't think they substantiated the need for it.
Does this mean that the insurance board is being influenced too much by companies?
Well, it's hard to say. I think the insurance board has not made up their mind to grant these increases at this time.
There seems to be no doubt that automobile insurance premium rates will go up. The only question to be settled is just how much, and there are indications that even that is no longer in question. Last week, the Texas Insurance Commission agreed to include income from investments by insurance companies in figuring the premium rates. However, it also agreed that the companies are entitled to a fair rate of return on their overall activity, a fair rate being 11 or 11.5%. Today, I asked Chairman Ned Price if that doesn't pretty well guarantee a healthy rate increase, and he answered with a rather weak, well, not necessarily. At today's rate hearing here in Austin, the staff gave figures pointing to a rate hike averaging 18 to 24%. The higher figure would prevail if the Commission decides to grant some local rate increases of more than 25%, which it has refused to do in the past. The expected barrage of anti-insurance rate increase spokesmen did not show up here, apparently when they learned that there will be further hearings in Dallas and Houston before the final decision is announced. Dallas Representative Dick Reed is one of those who feel the indicated rate hikes cannot be justified.
The story that they would decline to grant those kind of increases.
Whether the earlier decisions that would bring about those 18 to 25% premium rate increases will be changed or not depends on just how much pressure can be applied by legislators like Reed and by the citizens who will have to pay those rates. Chairman Price told me today that the final decision will be made by about mid-December.
Despite the protest by some factions in Detroit when the GM national contract was approved, the local ratification in Arlington was overwhelming. Over 1,600 UAW members gathered in their Arlington Union Hall this morning to receive their instructions on voting procedures from local President Jim Thornell. Although about 3,400 union members work at the Arlington Assembly Plant, the voting was limited to a little over 1,600 because some members were busy at jobs they had picked up during the strike. Following the vote, President Thornell had a press conference to announce the results. As it turned out, the vote was 1,606 to 48 to end the strike. I asked Thornell whether he felt General Motors had been brought to its knees.
I made his just satisfaction.
Now the picket lines are down, the maintenance people are firing up the boilers, and the first post-strike car should be rolling off the assembly line early in the morning. Jay Lewis, Channel 8 News on the Move, Arlington.
The problem, as I see it, is to provide the economic opportunity for people to have meaningful jobs once the money is spent, for instance, to train them, and once the money is spent at an adequate level to maintain them, either while they're training or before training.
You mean the state should see that there are jobs available?
Well, I think it's what I suggested this afternoon was that I think eventually, and in the not too distant future, the federal government will probably finance and administer the income maintenance programs, the welfare assistance programs. I don't think the states do have the resources to continue to finance them adequately, even the state's share of the present grant and aid programs.
We realize that now we have no longer the element of surprise where we may be able to sneak up on people, and we realize that other teams are now going to be definitely prepared for us, and I think that's a compliment to our team.
Who did you lose from last year's squad?
Last year we lost three of our frontline people, Steve Wendell and Don Sturr and Jim Naples. We think that what we have replacing them in sophomores, by the time the conference season begins, we can fill that void pretty well. Our nucleus of last year's team, we think, is back with our two guards, Gary Rice and Tommy Meyer, and our one forward, Ted Milady. And we have some other boys that are returning that lettered and figured into the championship race. And we have quite a few sophomores. And fortunately, our sophomores are tall, not powerfully strong. Most of them good basketball players, and it's just going to be a matter of time till they get the experience. Our front line is going to be very young. We'll have probably one senior that'll be in and out of there, and one junior, and the rest will be sophomores.
According to the former occupant of the remains of this home, her furniture and other belongings were inside when the structure was bulldozed to the ground by a contractor without notice. That was just one of many grievances residents of the Joe Lewis edition of Fort Worth took before the council today. The residents initially want the city to install water and sewer service to the area. Many of the homes here have been condemned because of inadequate water, improper sewage disposal, and poor electrical wiring. The families are bitter, and they say they're expected to upgrade their homes, but the city, in the words of one resident, oppressed the people by making demands but offering little or no assistance. I asked one of the residents here today, Mrs. Bobby Jones, what problems she is faced with.
Well, we don't have any sewage, we don't have any city water, and we don't have any fire protection down in here. And very little police protection.
What about the problems in the area of wrecking yards and dump grounds?
Well, we do. We have a lot of wrecking yards that has come in since the city's annexed this. We have a lot of wrecked cars and things that's laying around that needs to be cleaned up. In fact, the whole thing needs to be cleaned up.
City Manager Howard McMahon told the residents that the city will work with them in saving and upgrading the area. It was evident, though, that members of the council were not aware of the many problems suffered in this small portion of the city, annexed only last year. If and when water lines are supplied here, the cost will be unavoidably high for the residents. The same is true for sewer service. The nearest water main is about 5,000 feet away. One thing was accomplished in the meeting today. Garbage collection will begin soon for residents, and City Manager McMahon is to appoint one of his assistants to work with the complainants. Families here hope to see some positive action soon. Jim Green, Channel 8 News on the Move, Fort Worth.
Well, it requires the owners of property within the city to keep the house up to a certain standard, which should make the house safe and a sanitary and a decent place to live. This is what our codes are for. Water certainly is necessary, regardless of where it comes from. It's a very necessary thing. We require a certain amount of plumbing and facilities in a house. Again, as I said, there they have very little.
All over the world, people are worried about and talking about the population explosion. And from the looks of things here on the Champs-Élysées, you would think that France also would be concerned with the population explosion. But indeed, it's quite the contrary. French officials are trying to bring about more of an explosion in their country, more births of babies. There are financial rewards for the mother who has at least 3 children. There are better tax breaks. There's a pension. There's special insurance. Why the effort to get extra babies born in a world which already seems to be too crowded? Because in France, rather than having a post-war baby boom, there seemed to be no spirit for that kind of thing. Now the population is too heavily loaded down with older people, people who are not able to pay the taxes that are necessary to support themselves. So France is anxious to have more young people, bigger families, and the word here is, let's have more Frenchmen. In Paris, this is Travis Lynn, Channel 8 News.
Well, they first asked the Orange Bowl people to come down and speak with them. And, of course, we didn't know what kind of signal that was at the time. And then they came up and told us that they were coming back to the Cotton Bowl.
Do you still do handsprings?
I think I would have if I hadn't had a hold of Father Joyce.
Well, this will mean a great deal to the city of Dallas, won't it?
Well, we think so, Jerry. And, of course, I don't think it could happen to a finer city.
Which team do you think will have the best offense to go against the Irish? Now, you've seen them several times.
I don't know which team would have the best offense, Jerry, really, to go against that type ball club. Because I think Notre Dame will defense anybody's football team. They have a fine defensive ball club.
Why do you think the Irish chose the Cotton Bowl, Ken?
I think they picked the Cotton Bowl because they thought that was the greatest challenge they could have, and because they felt that in by choosing the Cotton Bowl, they might have a chance at the national championship.
period of tragedy and sorrow surrounding all of those events, the loss of the president, the wounding of the governor, were caught up, particularly in the first 4 days, in a way that I hope will never be repeated again in these United States. Time passes, grief is to a degree healed, but we are here to remember. In the same way that Dallas was drawn together in a circumstance of grief and sorrow, I hope again we can reunite in a tight-knit organization to go forward in the way that President Kennedy would have wanted